Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of IndyFest. I appreciate everybody coming out on a Saturday and watching on the live stream. And for those of you up at the special session who are watching on the live stream, I feel your pain. I'm John Ralston. I'm the CEO of the Nevada Independent. And I have to tell you, we have a great lineup of panels today, starting with this one. 2 of them are focused on the state of Nevada, and the last one has some folks from one of my favorite news organizations, The Bulwark, and I'm looking forward to that one too. Before we begin this panel, though, let me just again thank Station Casinos for their hospitality, and everyone give them a round of applause. This is a great property, and they've done a great job. Let me just quickly run through the other sponsors, and then we'll get started. Caesars Entertainment, the A's, the Castroverde Law Group, Agassi Foundation for Education, Southwest Gas, Raiders, UFC, Pharma, Nevada Mining Association, Core Construction, and the Robert A. Stoddall family. Let's give them a round of applause as well. I have to tell you, all the credit goes to my recently minted Chief Revenue Officer who's back there, Megan Riley. She is a force of nature and did a great job getting this whole thing on. All right. I am thrilled, the first panel of the day, to talk about the state of the Nevada economy with 3 experts. And one of my editors, Hali Bernstein, Saylor, is here to help with the questioning. She is an indispensable member of the Indy's team. I always say, and I just said back in the green room, she is the glue that holds the entire Indy together. Let me just do some quick introductions. Guzman gave me like 6 pages to read, but I'm not going to do that. So I'll start with him. Peter Guzman's the president of the Latin Chamber of Commerce. He's the founding principal of the OPA Group, and he is a big supporter of the governor, and he came back from the special session just to be here, and I appreciate that. Down there on the far left is Andrew Woods. He's the director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at UNLV, and before that he was the head of a public policy consulting firm called Woods Strategies. Andrew, thanks for being here.
Thanks, John.
And last but not least, a very old friend of mine. We're old, Steve. Steve Hill's the CEO of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. He's previously been the governor's Office of Economic Development, which he came to after a very successful business career. Thanks to everybody for being here. Let's have a round of applause. All right, Hali, you start us off.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. It's a pleasure to be here on this rainy Saturday morning. And I'm going to start with the most vague question possible. What do you think is the biggest issue facing Nevada's economy today? And anybody want to jump in or?
Start with Andrew.
Start with Andrew.
I'm the economist, so I can take a crack at this. I think what we're hearing from our businesses and from consumers, it's that word, uncertainty. And that uncertainty, what we're trying to figure out in talking to businesses and talking to consumers and talking to workers is what decisions are they making around that uncertainty, given that it is always there. Uncertainty is always part of the economy, right? I was just reading a passage 2 days ago at Outlook, from our first economic outlook in 1990, and the word uncertainty is mentioned on the first page multiple times. So we know this is part of Vegas history, it's part of the economy, but the thing is what were the decisions made after the fact, given that uncertainty? And what we're hearing from businesses, right, is that some are just kind of trying to punch through this and continuing to grow. We see that the construction industry, while it is a bit light, is still trying to kind of punch through with longer term projects. What we're hearing from more small businesses like restaurants and retail is that they are kind of more bunkering down and trying to protect their profit margin. They're not necessarily hiring, but they are still profitable. There are still customers. And then what we hear from customers and what we see in the data is an ever-increasing concentration of shopping habits because they're getting the word we're now using is thrifty, right? But they want trust in what they're buying. So they're going to the places they trust, like Walmart and Amazon and Costco. And this is across income distributions. Even Walmart has noted in their earnings calls that there's more high-end earners coming to Walmart because they trust they're going to get, quote, the lowest price. So I think we're seeing across different levels here that how they're responding to that uncertainty, and I think that is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I would say obviously data, analytics, very, very important. My chamber, we have all the biggest companies in the state of Nevada as members, but we also have this core group of, 1 to 10 employees, maybe 1 to 15 employees, small business. And, they operate a little differently. For them, it's just, it comes down to the price of goods, gas prices, egg prices. This stuff really, really matters to these core group of my membership. And how they deal with that is, I'm sure we'll talk about that, but those things really matter because if you're, for example, if you're in a landscape company and you got to fill up, 4 trucks and all the equipment, that gas price going up and down and, every day or every week going up and down, that fluctuation can really kill a small business or at least hurt them. So monitoring that little price changes is really, really big.
Andrew's one-word answer is right. Uncertainty is the number one issue facing the Nevada's economy right now, and that uncertainty is more pervasive and deeper, particularly through the middle class, than it has been in the last couple of decades at least, and that is affecting the decisions that those folks make. There is a reality to it. Our middle class is shrinking. There's also the sentiment issue where even the folks who haven't been hit yet with the concerns that they have, functionally, it is causing them to hesitate, frankly, to travel, and that affects the entire economy of the state.
Hali, let me just jump in. I want to read to the panel something that Andrew wrote just a few days ago, and which does not inspire confidence, even though it's called the Southern Nevada Business Confidence Index, which you wrote about, fell to 50.5 in the fourth quarter of 2025, its lowest reading since the Great Recession, and down from 75.2 in the previous quarter. That's a huge drop, obviously. The index dropped further below the neutral benchmark of 100, suggesting local business leaders became much more pessimistic about the economy in the fourth quarter. The index includes 5 components: business leaders' expectations for Nevada economic conditions, sales, profits, hiring, and capital expenditures. So that's very depressing, sir.
Well, welcome to economics, right? I mean, it's a dismal science for a reason. We tend to be a little more pessimistic side, which is why it's good to hang out with more optimistic people when we're...
That's why we brought Steve, by the way.
Yeah,
He's
so we
always
can
optimistic.
balance ourselves out. I think what's also interesting about that, John, that report we put out, which we do on a quarterly basis, by the way, is surveying our local businesses. But if you look at half of the respondents, the half of that half, so a quarter, say we're already in recession. The other quarter say they're expecting a recession next year. We at SEBR are not forecasting a recession. But this sentiment that's been out there, and it's been pervasive for a couple of years ever since inflation hit 9%, and it's come down. And last year, as economists, we were celebrating, well, hey, we brought down inflation, but the American consumer and business was pessimistic. That sentiment is just becoming more pervasive out there. What economists are really watching is, does that feed into action, though? So far, even though businesses are really pessimistic, same with consumers still are spending, and certain businesses are still investing. So it hasn't necessarily influenced their overall reaction, but it has made it a more nuanced atmosphere this year, such as what we've seen on the Las Vegas Strip, where they want value. And they are starting to say, as consumers, we want to make sure that when we purchase something, we understand what we're getting and what that value is to us. And that's affecting now their business decision. And it's the same thing with certain businesses and certain industries, depending on what they're being impacted by.
Peter, you've taken the Latin Chamber, I'm not just trying to flatter you, to new heights. How many members do you have now?
We're over 2,100.
2,100, that's just phenomenal. And so I'm sure you take the temperature of that membership regularly. Are they optimistic? Are they pessimistic? What are people telling you?
Well, again, and it's an honor and a privilege to be the president of the Latin Chamber of Commerce. And I'll tell you, that's why I'm saying the analytics and the data is very, very important. But we at the Chamber, we deal with a lot of demographics. 32% of my membership is non-Hispanic, which is a good thing. That's business doing business. But here's the thing. When I'm talking about those 1 to 10, 1 to 15 employees, I'm talking about, for example, maybe street vendors. They're doing well. They're still doing well. But the flip side of that is brick and mortar restaurants, my members are starting to get really, really worried because there's less people showing up. Flip side of that is, and it all connects, I talk to my grocery store owners or managers, and the grocery stores are doing well. the Hispanic grocery stores are killing it. But what does that really mean? That may mean that a lot of people are buying more groceries and staying home and cooking and not visiting brick and mortar. So that's something we're monitoring, because I have a lot of street vendors type businesses as members, but we have a lot of restaurants, and that's something that concerns me a little bit, that these folks are not going out doing the restaurants. We have a movie theater that is not doing well, so less people are going, they're staying home. And how that's going to affect the economy is something that we have to really watch. Again, it goes back to the pricing.
So, Hali, I'm going to let you jump back in a second, but I just wanted to ask Steve, so you're in the business essentially of making a certain segment of the Las Vegas economy vibrant. You want to bring people in. And that old saw about if a Las Vegas sneezes, that the entire country gets a cold. You got to worry about that we are like the canary in the coal mine for what might be happening in the national economy, which could be a real problem for the convention authority. What signs are you seeing?
Well, I'll start by saying, just to follow up on Peter's point, I think small businesses are hit harder by the uncertainty than bigger businesses. I mean, something can come along that changes, one thing that changes, and it can destroy a small business where,
100%.
A company like MGM is going to take that in stride, deal with it, and have the resources to be able to recover, and they're a very diversified business. So, as you look at Andrew's survey, it's probably not size weighted, so you're going to survey more smaller companies in that survey, and they are, I think, going to be more concerned with their outlook than the larger companies are. We are a canary. We are a very discretionary choice. And so when people start to get concerned, they're going to step back from discretionary choices first. And so there's a light that goes on when Las Vegas slows down, and we have certainly slowed down over the last 10 months. I will say, when it comes to the financial numbers in particular, 2023 and 2024 were kind of aberrations on the positive side. And so our comps from those 2 years are very, very tough. We set financial records in Las Vegas both of those years almost every month, where it was the best February we had, the best March we had, the best April we've ever had, and just through the year.
Is that just a comeback from the pandemic? Is that what caused that?
It was a combination of really two things. It was coming back from the pandemic, and then it was this surge of offerings that we haven't had before. We brought the Sphere online. We brought Allegiant online. We brought the Super Bowl here. We brought Formula One here. Those numbers radiated out through the outcomes for Las Vegas in 23 and 24, and a bunch of really good decisions that we made through the pandemic were helpful. We also had a surge of federal funding through COVID that was available to spend, and we went through, plus or minus 18 months where people didn't feel comfortable traveling but missed it. And so you had a revenge travel phenomenon. All of those things came together in 23 and 24. Now we're comparing ourselves to those numbers. Now that doesn't really count from a visitation and occupancy standpoint, but the visitation and occupancy numbers are a result of the properties trying to find the balance between the price of things and the number of people who come.
Go ahead, Hali.
Okay. A lot of this seems to be reliant on travel, tourism, and everything, all the economy, the trickle down to people being employed, coming to spend money in the grocery stores, staying in hotels. What do you feel? Do you feel that we need to diversify more? Do you think we need to put a greater emphasis on tourism, or find other ways to help keep this community and the state vibrant?
We need to do both. Those are not mutually exclusive things. They should not be mutually exclusive. So we need, we tend to, and before I was kind of in the middle of this industry, take the tourism and hospitality industry a little bit for granted, take the growth of that industry for granted a little bit, and I think what we've seen over the last decade is we can't do that. So the continued investment in the industry, the focus on making sure that our tourism industry is healthy is an important thing to do. But as we look at Nevada into the future, it is more and more going to be about what is in addition to the tourism and hospitality industry. If we're going to continue to grow, most of that growth is going to come either to industries peripheral to tourism and hospitality and sports, or alternatives to that. And you've seen us diversify over the last 10 or 15 years, and the statistics would hold that up, but in the future that diversity needs to accelerate.
Andrew, one of the things that was mentioned at your economic outlook on Thursday was slow growth. So in order to feed these industries and these jobs that are coming, we need to grow. How do you feel that we can do that and make it affordable for people, since housing seems to be pretty tight here?
Sure. And housing, I'm going to separate housing from the other affordability questions, I think, because it is its own unique, especially Vegas and Clark County has its own unique challenges with housing. But when you look at just overall about growing the economy, like I think to Steve's point, we do need to do both. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. I will say that I've been with colleagues around the nation who work at other centers or with economists or business economists, and they like to question why we put so much emphasis on sports and stadiums and why is that such a big economic benefit. And I say, look at when you have a quarter of our jobs tied to leisure and hospitality, when you have 31% of GDP, real GDP tied to leisure and hospitality, and nearly half the state budget influenced by it, anything we can do to make sure that the industry thrives is going to be good for the state. That being said, to Steve's point and what we've said time and time again, and we're just have talked about with reporters, is that we are very highly influenced by the discretionary spending. And so these other industries that are really important for that growth is things like healthcare. We know that we're going to add 10,000 plus jobs already over the next 10 years in healthcare, but we know that we have a deficit of 50,000 jobs in healthcare that we need to grow. And those, on average, pay higher than the average wage in Clark County. Now, there is barriers to entry there that we need to think about and we have workforce training programs that we need to really think about. The next two that are in terms of job growth is professional scientific services. So that's like accountants and lawyers, white collar jobs. We need those. The other one then is information technology, which also requires a kind of different of training and skill sets. But we're also going to add leisure and hospitality jobs. So we need to figure out all of those different ways that we have workforce training and take it a little bit more seriously, in my opinion. And part of that is how you grow the economy is increasing worker productivity. And I know there's a lot of conversation about AI. Maybe you've got a question here about that. But on our take is you've got to be really investing in human capital, and it needs to be a long-term solution, not a short-term. There's no quick fix on this to fix these issues. It's not going to be 6 months. It's got to be 6 to 60 years.
You know, you started out asking what really concerns, what is our concern with the economy? You know, at the end of the day, I believe Vegas, we always figure it out. We do hospitality better than anybody. We do entertainment better than anybody. I think we get the best product for the best value. But the one thing that really overrides all of this that could destroy, everything, the economy, is healthcare. We just can't, it's not sustainable to have people showing up at emergency rooms, at hospitals, uninsured, and expect that this is going to be okay. It's not. The hospitals, the healthcare professionals, a lot of them are my members. That is an area for concern big time. If we don't figure this out, everything else, it's going to have ramifications on everything we're talking about here today.
So real quickly, Hal, let me just ask Andrew a follow-up question on that. You mentioned a deficit of 3,000 healthcare jobs since Peter just...
50,000 over the next 10 years, yeah, to catch up with the national average.
Can you break that down?
Like what kind of jobs?
Exactly.
Majority is ambulatory, so it's not necessarily hospitals, though it would be nice if we weren't just building one children's hospital, 10, right, to catch up with it. But it's really also ambulatory care. There are also, let's be honest, with an aging population, it's going to be also a lot of home health aides. So there's kind of these different things. Now, I really want to put also, it's really important to note that if we were to kind of make some investments in this space, you can also bring in kind of the exciting things like biotech, which is something I've been working on prior to even being at CBER with the city of Las Vegas for 5-6 years. And sometimes it's just getting small things built like infrastructure on laboratory space, because there is very little laboratory space for entrepreneurs out there in that space. Even though at UNLV we have fantastic researchers working with AstraZeneca and other drug companies.
And that's not all just an expense for us. It's an economic opportunity too.
Right, yeah.
You know, when I left GoEd, when I started with GoEd, we had a 35,000 job deficit in Southern Nevada. The governor actually cut that about in half by joining the ACA, and the uninsured population went from about 21% to 11%, and that made a huge difference. And it brought that money to Nevada and kept it in Nevada. That healthcare gap translates partly to a lack of care, but also to us exporting our health care to other locations, and that money from that health care coverage goes with it. And so if we can keep that money, it's an economic opportunity as well as a health opportunity.
Yep.
We touched really briefly, you said we were going to come back to housing. If we're going to bring in all these people to do all these jobs, where are they going to live? And do you think that the water crisis here in Southern Nevada will affect being able to build more houses? Or the land situation, there doesn't seem to be a greater amount of land that we have available to build on?
I'll start with the water first. So I feel more confident on the water because CBER's been working with the Water Authority since 1997, and we do the population forecast so they can plan, right? And this is where long-term investment really does make a difference, because we've reduced water consumption by a quarter, and yet we've added almost 1 million more people. With the land situation, it is much more challenging and difficult, and I don't know all the specifics, but clearly land prices are very high. There's a disincentive to build unless you're building at the upper income spectrum for, nicer, those kind of homes, and we don't have enough workforce housing. My colleague Sean McCoy, who works at the Lead Center for Real Estate, does a lot of research on this. He was on stage at Outlook talking about this, and he does, yes, believe that we need more land from the Clark County Lands Bill, and that takes a political action from Congress. But he also talked about, we also have to get used to the idea that we need to build more density, and it's not one or the other, it's both. How do we get there? I don't know, I'm just an economist, right? But yeah, we see it, and when we do these population forecasts, that is a hurdle in terms of, if we're expecting another 340,000 people in the next 10 years, that's another city of Henderson. Where are we going to put all of them? Our assumption is we will figure it out, because that's what we're given as the task, is let the planning authorities figure this out, and the politicians and all the leaders. But that is a real challenge.
I'll say on water, I moved to Vegas 38 years ago. We were maybe 600,000 people. We use less water now with 2.4 million people than we did in 1987 when I moved here. There's really two different water questions. One is the West and the United States going to take care of the Colorado River system? If we get our allocation, we have actually some capacity, a fair amount of capacity left. Even now, 55% of the water that we use is for residential grass. So we can make choices that will allow us, if we said there's not going to be any residential grass, we could double the amount of people here with the water we have. And we're using less water than our allocation. Now, there's more people involved in the Colorado River system and figuring out how to allocate, 11 or 12 million acre feet versus the 17.5 million acre feet that are in the system. We need to figure out, or things are going to run dry, and that would be a real issue. And I really don't think the western states are going to allow that to happen. From a housing standpoint, and frankly from an industry standpoint, we're at a point where we're going to need to find new ways of doing things in order to deliver housing for the people who need it in a way that is reasonably affordable for them. As the industry looks to grow, if you try and pencil a project in kind of the mid-tier of an integrated resort right now, you can't make that work. And so we need innovation in housing, we need innovation in the tourism and hospitality industry in order to continue to see the growth in Southern Nevada.
Yeah, I don't think there's one answer, but I think everything needs to be thrown out. Innovation is key, but listen, we can't keep talking about all this land we have available around us, but it's not available. We got to make it available. I think we got to create tax-free development zones where we allow developers, public-private partnerships. Nothing wrong with all this stuff. Let the market assist in this. In attainable housing, why does it take so long for a wonderful organization like, let's say, Nevada Hand? By the time they start a project or even talk about a project and begin construction, it takes too long. We got to speed these things up. We got to incentivize. We like to look at developers as the bad guy. We got to incentivize them. They're not the bad guy to me. We need to incentivize them to do more. Tax-free zones, tax-free development zones, public-private partnerships, throw everything on the table, make it work. It's hard. Construction costs are high. The products cost a lot more now. But I still believe that throwing everything on the table, getting the smart people that do this in the room and incentivize them is the way to do it.
Okay, speaking of, go ahead.
No, I just want to follow up with that, Peter. I guess, and my friend Steve and I have had many, shall I say, feisty discussions over the years about the use of incentives, which we can talk a little bit about with what's going on in Carson City now. But you're a free market guy, Peter, but if you start creating incentives like that, you're going to create a kind of a skewed market in a way, aren't you? And there'll be some developers here who don't have access to those. Will say, how come I can't get that too? Steve, you know what I'm talking about. You remember when that happened. So aren't you worried about that, Peter?
What I'm worried about is that we don't have enough housing to have the workforce here to let Vegas explode again. So that's what worries me. And how are we going to get around that? We're going to get around that by getting creative and, yes, incentivizing. Listen, tax credit, tax dollars, it's not the government's money, it's our money. Let's use it as a business tool. Let's create these areas and these zones where we incentivize developers, public-private partnerships, to come in and do the infrastructure. But we got to help them make it pencil out. If we do that, you'll see construction go up. That's my belief.
John, if I can add something to that too, I would say though that where government in Nevada could be doing a better job is providing the vision, which is they're getting the input from the community. What do we want to be, in the next 10 years? And this is not a Republican or Democrat argument. Texas, I've been to Texas and toured around Austin. I've toured around Phoenix. I've toured around in Florida. Cities and states are doing this where they're very much laying out, here's what we want, and then they use the market and the incentive to come in and fill in the gap, because obviously they're better at that, but at the end of the day, what is the goalpost that we're trying to aim for? In Nevada, I think we've had a lot of risk takers move in and build up this economy and this wonderful thing that we have here. But I also think in the next phase, especially things like healthcare, where the market is already distorted, you need to have the government kind of come in and say, here is the vision. Now let's put the rules of the road in place and let the market then fill in the gaps.
I thought our conversations were just energetic, not heated.
Energetic.
But,
I used the wrong word. You're correct.
But when you set up, if you're going to set up an incentive for anything, there needs to be access to anyone who would qualify. There need to be the policy around it needs to be to the benefit of the taxpayers of Nevada and not pulling money out of their pockets. So ultimately, there is a return on that investment. If you can't design those policies in that way, I wouldn't recommend doing it. But I think you can. And the housing bill that passed during the last session has that type of competitive aspect to it where here's some money that's available for these purposes. Apply, tell us what you will bring to the table, and let's choose what the best deals are for the citizens of the state.
But if you, I'll let you come back in a second, but I keep saying things that trigger me. I guess what I'm wondering about, Steve, is that if you provide tax incentives, that inherently means that you're taking tax money away from something else. The argument that has been used.
That's not
okay,
right.
We're going to have one of our old discussions
sure.
again.
I think we should because it's an investment in something. That's what I'm saying. It needs to be a return to the taxpayers over time. It is a temporary injection of tax dollars so that you get more tax dollars back for some reason in the future.
And that's the argument on, for instance, Allegiant Stadium.
Sure.
Right?
And look at the return on that. I mean, I heard all these arguments. Don't go testify, do that. Why are you doing this? And the billionaires involved, blah, 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 blah. How's that turned out?
I think I wrote that, Peter.
Yeah. How's that turned out for us? Turned out pretty good.
Could we get a better football team?
I don't know about that, but we did get a Super Bowl, and we're going to get many more.
Go ahead, Hali. I'm sorry.
I was just going to bring up the film tax credits, which is basically a kind of an incentive program to for the studios and everything. Is it going to be a viable proposal, do you think? Because you've had there's been plenty of people that have said it doesn't pencil out eventually. It doesn't bring the money in that it says it's going to.
Are you asking me that?
You can go ahead and start with that.
Yeah. Well, obviously the legislature over the next few days is going to make the decision of whether or not we're going to move forward with that. I've kind of stayed out of that conversation, but what I will say is, and I've said this about the stadiums, I've said this about the gig factory, the conversations that John and I have had, is that once the decision has been made by the leadership of this state, I think everybody ought to get behind the decision and help make it work as well as they can. And I've said that about the things that I've worked on. This has not been my project, but I'm saying it about that too. There's some really positive aspects to what bringing the film industry to the tourism and entertainment and sports capital of the world could mean, and we're going to do everything we can to capitalize on that if it's passed.
Okay. And I was going to say Andrew probably has a few words to say on this.
I mean, look, I know the profession is not look kindly on film tax credits. I mean, there are lots of studies on this, and they have not necessarily proven the rubber meets the road in terms of what's promised. And I even got into a bit of a debate one night with an economist from Georgia on this and their program, but it's all about how it's designed. I think, to Peter's point, like why the Allegiant Stadium is, we can see a little bit more of the ROI is because we have a tax system that is designed around tours, leisure, and hospitality to benefit the community. And so I don't blame film. I think it makes sense that they're trying to leave California and find another place, given their margins are tighter and tighter, and it's a competitive industry. I think what would be ideally, but this is just an ideal point, is that it's not about incentives for film, but more about how do we get the ROI for the state down the line, because we have, in my view, we have a very inefficient system, overall, especially because we're not experiencing the growth that we had in the 80s and 90s. We're still growing, but we're growing at slower rates. So the system itself is not set up for a world where you have that slower growth, but we still need to pay for schools and roads and parks and all the things we love and enjoy. And what we keep hearing when I go out and give talks, which I give something like 50 some, well, I don't give 50 talks a year. A combined CBER gives some 50 talks a year in the community. We keep hearing this word quality of life. And so I think part of this is like, are we designing the system on the back end so that there is that ROI? And when it comes to leisure and hospitality, we have that system set up in place. But for these other industries, I'm not always sure that we have that system in place, that when it's time, the bill is due, and we can get some of that return on investment, that we have it ready.
I'm not an expert on tax credits per se, but I do know this. I have confidence in Hughes and them being involved in everything that they've done. I can't imagine this community, if you think back to before Hughes and the Summerlin area and everything they've built out there. They build really quality. For them to be involved, that definitely was impactful to my chamber and how we. But the second thing is, listen, we need cranes. We need cranes up. We need construction up. It's so important to have construction going on in this community. These are really well-paying jobs. That money gets funneled in the community. I believe it stays in the community, and that's powerful for my members, for our community, and our state.
Steve, let me ask you something about, we're going to have a couple of leaders of the gaming industry on next, but you do a lot of surveys, and you're very aware of how people who come to Vegas react to their Vegas experience. And it seems to me, I keep hearing this talk more and more, that it's not just random Reddit threads, but that people are really, they come here and they say, it's not the same Vegas experience. I got to pay $25 for a bottle of water, all these other things. Do you get the sense that that is becoming more and more real? And do you get a sense, and I'll talk to our next two guests about this, that the industry recognizes this and is reacting to it?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. To start with, there is no answer that universally covers the leisure and tourism and hospitality industry. And you'll have Aisha on, and the MGM has the entire spectrum of offerings to the customers who come here, and it's different for each one of them. And you have Wynn, and you've seen recently Craig Billings has said that they're doing great.
Right.
So the upper end of folks in the economy, our visitors, are doing great. Their perception of their experience here tends to be very high, and that is not the part of the market that's suffering. We talk a lot about value, and it's been the value conversation over the last 4 or 5 months. And you kind of got to break that apart. There's an affordability aspect. There is a sensitivity to what our customers can afford that has been heightened because of the uncertainty that we talked about earlier. So they're more sensitive to that, and that's the overall experience. There's also been complaints about pricing that surprises people. It's not. There are complaints about resort fees and parking fees, but frankly, those are here to stay, and they are very transparent at this point, and it's a part of an overall price for that room, and people know what they are and what those prices are all in when they now reserve a room. But when you get to your room and something, the bottle of water has been the big, topic of conversation. There's a few others out there that have become memes. Those things we need to fix those. And I think the properties have recognized that and are taking steps to do that. There's an awful lot there's hundreds of thousands of things that any particular property prices. Every menu item in every restaurant, in every mini bar, in every service in the organization. So it takes actually a little bit of time to work through those and make sure that that's the appropriate pricing. But I think that those steps are being taken.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to change topics altogether here, sort of. I wanted to know, even though the government shutdown has now ended, you found that things that the federal government does really has a severe effect here in Nevada. What do you think that, can the state and the businesses here do anything to kind of insulate themselves from these changes and these actions that the federal government is taking?
In some cases, yes, and in some cases, it's more difficult. Typically, you turn to DC to help solve these issues. And for different reasons other than tourism, policy decisions are being made that are creating a headwind for tourism. And some of those headwinds you can overcome, some you can't, some you have to do potentially with pricing. But the travel experience, we lobby for, we work from the time somebody leaves their home to get to an airport, to clearing customs, to getting a visa, to on-time flights, to the reliability of those flights. All of those things we lobby to improve, but we don't have direct control, and so we have to somehow entice customers to come, sometimes in spite of those headwinds.
Yeah. And for Peter, have you seen through membership in the Latin Chamber, have the immigration crackdowns affected your members, their businesses, and how would they deal with those?
Well, listen, first of all, shout out to Senator Cortez Masto, and this is just my opinion, for taking a courageous vote to keep the government open. As a business owner, you don't get to, when your board starts arguing, you don't get to say, well, I'm going to shut down for the next 14 days and expect to succeed. So how they run the government like that is beyond me. But that being said, my members, my Hispanic entrepreneurs and business owners, are very unique. A lot of that range that I was talking about, the 1 to 10, 1 to 15, they're family-owned businesses, which means when things get rough, they just work more hours, probably take a little more profit, but they're going to get through it. They come from chaotic places. They know about chaos, so they're going to just fight through it by working more hours. Maybe more family members are going to have to jump in and get through these hard times. But you know what? Let me just say this. Shout out to these Hispanic incredible entrepreneurs and business owners who come to this country, like my father, who escaped communism, Cuba, and love this flag, love this country, and they don't get enough credit for being such great contributors, taxpayers, and part of our economy. And that Las Vegas couldn't open without my members, without these Hispanic entrepreneurs and business people that are doing it the right way, that just want to work and share some of this American dream. Shout out to them because they're figuring it out.
Or any Peter at some point is going to announce his candidacy for something. I don't know what it is. But
You've been saying that for 12 years, but you know what? I'm doing this for the right reason. But I may run.
I didn't suggest otherwise.
But I may run.
But are your members, some of your members scared, Peter?
Are they here?
Are they scared?
Yeah, I think they come here scared. I think they live scared, and I think that's part of their DNA at this point.
But this is
they were scared in their own country.
But they watch TV. They see what's going on in Chicago. They see what's going on in LA and other places. Are they worried that could happen here?
I think what they want is just to be left alone to do the business that they came here to do, to contribute. Yeah, they're scared. There is fear, but the flip side is, you know, if we're talking about ICE and deportation, it's been pretty mild here. It's been pretty mild in Las Vegas, and I'm in constant contact with law enforcement about that. You know, my members are not like any different than any of you. Listen, they don't want to live next door to hardened criminals, pedophiles, murderers, or just like none of us want to, okay? So the idea of deporting hardened criminals, listen, they're with that. They're not any different than any of us. They want to live in safe communities.
Can I add something about the immigration story? Just, you know, we do the population forecast every year for Clark County as well as a statewide population forecast. And, you know, we're anticipating another 340,000 residents for the next 10 years. That is highly dependent both on two things: Californians moving here and international migration. So we're going to be paying really close attention to it next year and the years ahead as we get more information of what the impact is about how that's impacting our future population growth. And part of that story, too, is we know since the pandemic, 2 in 5 businesses that are operating right now were started during or after the pandemic. So there's a lot of entrepreneurship, and Peter and I have talked about this with his members, that there is a large proportion of, say, the Hispanic community who are also entrepreneurs. There's a large proportion of the Asian community who are entrepreneurs. So what does that do with the economy going forward if we have, you know, such a strict crackdown on immigration?
So
I guarantee you polling is probably higher on immigrants moving here than Californians. Just kidding.
So we only have a couple minutes left, and I'd really like to have each of you comment on something that Andrew referred to earlier, and we can start with Andrew and just go down. And that's the impact of AI on all of this. You have to be aware of this now. If you're in business, if you run a business, it's either scary or it's an opportunity. But there is going to be labor disruption, and it's already started, and it's probably going to go up like this from the smart people that I read about this. Andrew, what are your thoughts on how that's going to affect the economy here?
Well, we're always Vegas is always the poster child for like the number one place they say that's going to be automated. I mean, you see it on the casino floor walking around, right, of how many machines are out there now that don't have like a live dealer. I think, though, you're going to have bifurcation of these products, right, where you'll pay more for human service, whether it's a nice craft cocktail or kind of a nice experience with gaming or sports betting or whatnot. And then for everyone else, you'll see more of this automation. As economists, and you look throughout history, right, there's always technological disruption. Sometimes we make it sound really nice and that overall we all benefited, which is true, but we also, the Nobel Prize in economics this past year went to researchers at MIT who talked about how that disruption was actually pretty chaotic and not great for everyone, and it took a long time before we saw the benefits. So I think with AI, it's going to be really choppy. It also does present opportunities because, like with our students, they can streamline learning some of these skills a lot faster than they used to. Like for me, when I was learning data science, it took months and years. Now it can take weeks and months because you can use AI to kind of backfill some of what you're doing.
Peter?
AI definitely, there's a lot of fear amongst a lot of my smaller members of AI because of the unknown. So we're at the Latin Chamber, we're stepping up our game when it comes to education and AI and all that. You know, listen, our mid-tier and higher, they have to embrace AI and get to know it and get comfortable with it. My lower tier members, the handymen, the landscaping companies, the street vendors, those folks, listen, they're going to survive all of this. They're going to survive all of this.
Steve?
Yeah, I think AI is an opportunity for our organization, for many. I think the concern around labor replacement is real and valid, but I think it's going to be slower actually than most people, in that industry are predicting. It replaces language issues pretty well. From a calculation standpoint, a numbers issue right now, it is wrong way too often. Right. And it'll speed up calculations, but you have to check everything it's doing. And that's going to take some time to fix. And until it's more reliable than who it might replace, it's not going to replace them. And I'm going to say something as we maybe wrap up here, because we've talked about the concerns we have a lot. I think the outlook in Nevada and in Las Vegas is still really bright. We have some real structural advantages in the tourism industry from a scale standpoint, from being the host of the best companies in this industry, to the infrastructure that we have, to the offering, the variety of offerings that we have. We have the ability to respond to all of these things, and we will. We talk about reinventing ourselves all the time, and times like this, when all these different properties can respond differently and test things and learn from them and do the next thing, is just what we're going through right now. And so I don't want to have an entire segment talking about the concerns and not talking about the other side of that too.
I knew you could not contain your preternatural optimism for an entire 45 minutes. So I'm glad that we are closing on that note. Hali, thanks a lot for helping with the questions. Gentlemen, thanks for coming out on a Saturday for this great discussion. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Hali.
We're going to get a quick picture.
Yeah, just don't make me stand next to Steve.
What's that?
Don't make me stand next to
Okay.
Steve.
All right.
Not that I dislike him, he's just really tall.